Imagine a nation that, in just one generation, transformed itself from poverty to the world's economic powerhouse. A nation that built entire cities from scratch, lifted hundreds of millions out of poverty, and became the engine of global growth. This is the story of China, the miracle that stunned the world. China's growth has decelerated. 5% might sound impressive, but for China, it's a problem. Why? Because everything, government budgets, company profits, even household dreams, was built on the assumption that rapid growth would never end. Slowing migration, a shrinking population, and entire cities built for people who never arrived. The cracks are showing. The dream is colliding with reality, and beneath the surface, a debt time bomb is ticking. Nowhere is the danger more visible than in real estate. Real estate is the beating heart of China's economy, 30% of GDP. For years, buying a home wasn't just about shelter, it was a bet that prices would always rise. For many, it was the only way to build wealth, to secure a future, even to get married. But the bubble grew and grew. Homes now cost up to 46 times the average annual wage. Building standards are often poor, and as prices stall or fall, millions are trapped, over-leveraged, unable to sell, watching their dreams crumble. The government tried to cool the market, purchase limits, talk of property taxes, but often made things worse. The result? A house of cards trembling in the wind. But how bad is it really? The truth is, nobody knows for sure. The government itself admits some statistics are man-made. Alternative measures, electricity use, rail cargo, even satellite images of nighttime lights, suggest growth may be much lower than reported. Sometimes, official numbers have been off by as much as double. In the world's second-largest economy, the numbers may be more fiction than fact. And the problems don't stop at numbers. China's population is shrinking, the workforce is aging, social safety nets are strained to the breaking point. Young people facing impossible odds are lying flat, rejecting the grind, refusing to play a rigged game. Food and water security are under threat. Droughts, floods, and reliance on imports have driven up prices. Corruption, once the grease that kept the machine running, now threatens to jam the gears as opportunities dry up. Internationally, trade wars and failed Belt and Road projects have soured relations and squeezed export markets. So, is China on the brink of collapse? The truth is more complicated. Yes, China faces a perfect storm. Debt, demographics, unreliable data, unrest, environmental crises. But an outright collapse? Unlikely. China's government holds $3.4 trillion in foreign currency reserves. It controls the banks, the media, even the streets. If things get bad, it can step in, completing undelivered housing, quelling unrest. But the era of unstoppable growth is over. The most likely scenario? A long, grinding stagnation, like Japan's lost decades, but with Chinese characteristics. And unlike Japan, China is still much poorer per capita, and its authoritarian system offers no democratic outlet for frustration. The consequences will ripple far beyond China's borders. Why should you care? Because China's fate is the world's fate. A collapse or even a slowdown could shatter supply chains, crash commodity markets, and spark a global recession. Your job, your savings, your future could all be affected. So what comes next? Will China find a way to reinvent itself, to manage its debt, reform its economy, and navigate the demographic storm? Or will it stumble into stagnation, dragging the world with it? The answer is still unwritten. But one thing is certain, the era of the Chinese economic miracle is over. The next chapter will be darker, more uncertain, and more dramatic than anything we've seen before. The world watched as China rose. Now the world holds its breath, waiting to see if it can survive its own success. Subscribe for more deep dives into the world's biggest stories. What do you think is next for China? Let us know in the comments. Let's rewind. Picture China in the late 1970s, rural, impoverished, isolated from the world. Then, with one bold pivot, Deng Xiaoping throws open the doors. The world floods in, capital, technology, ambition. Cities like Shenzhen explode from fishing villages into global tech hubs. Shanghai's skyline, once flat and gray, now rivals New York and Dubai. Factories hum day and night. Migrant workers pour in by the millions, chasing dreams of prosperity. The world's supply chains reroute through China. Your phone, your laptop, your sneakers, all born in the workshops of the Middle Kingdom. It's not just about numbers, it's about hope. For the first time in generations, Chinese families believe their children will have better lives. The China dream becomes a national obsession, but every miracle has a price. As skyscrapers rose, so did expectations. The government, businesses, and families all bet on one thing, that the future would be even brighter than the present. Local officials, desperate to meet growth targets, borrow and build. Highways to nowhere, airports in empty provinces, ghost cities, entire urban landscapes waiting for people who never come. Households stretch themselves thin, taking on mortgages for apartments that may never be finished. Young couples delay marriage, hoping to save enough for a down payment. The stakes rise with every passing year. But what happens when the music stops? Let's break down the numbers. On paper, China's national debt looks manageable. But peel back the layers and the picture darkens. Provincial governments, unable to print money, have racked up $23 trillion in debt, much of it hidden in off-balance sheet vehicles. These debts funded roads, bridges, and apartment towers that may never pay for themselves. State-owned enterprises, the backbone of China's industrial might, are drowning in over $15 trillion of debt. Many of their projects, like the Belt and Road Initiative, have turned into financial sinkholes, with loans to foreign governments going unpaid. And the average Chinese family? Household debt has tripled in just over a decade, most of it tied up in homes that are no longer appreciating. If property values fall, millions could find themselves underwater. Add it all up, and China's total debt load is a staggering 360% of GDP. That's more than the US, more than Japan at the start of its lost decades. For a developing country, it's a recipe for disaster. Real estate is more than an investment in China, it's a social contract. Owning a home is a prerequisite for marriage, for status, for security, but the dream has curdled. Developers, once flush with cash, now teeter on the brink of bankruptcy. Construction halts. Buyers protest in the streets, demanding the homes they paid for. Prices in some cities have soared to 46 times the average annual wage. Buildings go up fast, but corners are cut. Leaky roofs, cracked foundations, unfinished interiors, the reality behind the glossy ads. The government tries to intervene, limiting purchases, threatening property taxes, but often makes things worse. The market wobbles, then plunges. For millions, the home that was supposed to guarantee their future now threatens to destroy it. How do you measure an economy built on illusion? Chinese officials have every incentive to inflate the numbers. Promotions, funding, even personal safety depend on hitting ambitious targets. So the data is massaged, manipulated, sometimes outright fabricated. Only 2% of Chinese pay regular taxes. The rest of the economy operates in the shadows. GDP growth, employment, even electricity usage, everything is up for debate. International organizations try to peer through the fog, using satellite images of nighttime lights, rail cargo volumes, and bank lending data. The results? China's real growth may be just half of what's officially reported. In a world built on trust and transparency, China's black box approach sows uncertainty and fear. The numbers only tell part of the story. The real crisis is human. China's population is shrinking for the first time in modern history. The workforce is aging. Social safety nets, pensions, healthcare are stretched to the breaking point. Young people, disillusioned by high costs and low prospects, are lying flat, opting out of the rat race. Protests flare up over undelivered homes, unpaid wages, and government corruption. Food and water security are under siege. Droughts and floods devastate crops. Reliance on imports leaves China vulnerable to global shocks. Internationally, China's aggressive push for influence has backfired. Trade wars with the US, failed Belt and Road projects, and rising geopolitical tensions have isolated Beijing at a time when it needs friends most. Corruption, once the lubricant of rapid growth, now gums up the works. As opportunities dry up, so does the willingness to look the other way. Is China on the brink? Some say yes, a collapse is inevitable. But the truth is more nuanced. China's government wields immense power. With $3.4 trillion in foreign reserves, it can prop up banks, finish stalled housing projects, and suppress unrest. The media, the internet, even the streets are tightly controlled. But this control comes at a cost. Without transparency, without accountability, problems fester. The most likely outcome isn't a dramatic crash, but a long, grinding stagnation. A slow-motion crisis with no easy resolution. Think Japan's lost decades, but with more people, more debt, and fewer democratic safety valves. Why does this matter? Because China's fate is the world's fate. A collapse, or even a prolonged slowdown, would send shockwaves through global supply chains. Commodity prices would crash. Exporters from Australia to Africa would suffer. Financial markets would tumble. Your job, your savings, your future could all be at risk. And geopolitically, a weakened China could become more unpredictable, more aggressive, more willing to take risks abroad to distract from problems at home. So what happens next? Will China find the courage to reform, to tackle its debt, open its markets, and empower its people? Or will it double down on control, stifling innovation and hope? Will the world adapt to a new reality? Or will it be caught off guard by the next shock from Beijing? The answer is still unwritten. But one thing is certain: the era of the Chinese economic miracle is over. The next chapter will be darker, more uncertain, and more dramatic than anything we've seen before. The world watched as China rose. Now the world holds its breath, waiting to see if it can survive its own success. In the end, China's story is our story, a tale of ambition, risk, and the price of dreams. The stakes have never been higher. Subscribe for more deep dives into the world's biggest stories. What do you think is next for China? Let us know in the comments.